yeah, people are saying even here that they're going to try looking for areas where there's not so many expats there. And so people, unfortunately, by that time it's a little too late. And so what is one to do about that? Well, fortunately, the world's a big place, and even though since 2020 travel has become more of a challenge for some of us, and it will become even more of a challenge unless things change.
All right, it's Italian style green beans, tuna patties, homemade rolls, and baked potatoes. Where's the pizza? Oh, that was yesterday.
Now, Mexico's huge. That's one thing that is an attraction and a draw, is that it's so big and there's so many different areas of it to choose from. Although Mexico has been a destination for several decades now, therefore it's already been discovered. I'm sorry to tell you that, which means it's going to be a bit higher priced. Here, $700 a month is on the low end. Now, when I say low end, I'm talking about 3 and 4 bedroom houses and apartments, furnished, unfurnished. I'm not talking about little studios. You can always find a little studio or a little tiny 1 bedroom for a lot less, you know. So, you know, if that's all a person really wants and needs, they can get that for a lot less. But they're not necessarily advertised in the way that the expensive properties are. So again, that's on the low end, and here you've got high cost of living right next door, you know, California. So of course things are going to be in the $1,000 to $1,500 price range and even higher. So, you know, that's what you're dealing with. A lot of places are like that in Mexico. You know, if you want a nice big 3 or 4 bedroom, you're looking at, you know, big prices. Now, of course, when we moved to Cuenca, Ecuador, we were the first ones to be vlogging, but not just that, we were the first ones to be living outside of what the locals called Gringo Alley, even though people warned us about it, told us not to do it and that kind of thing, that it was dangerous, and of course there's some truth to that, but so we dealt with it and we lived there for years. But when you're there and you're walking down the street, so things happen. It's just that when you're out there in the local neighborhood, the likelihood of a neighbor coming by and saying, hey, I've got an apartment for rent, can you help me? Because they don't speak English. Can you help me rent it? Do you have any friends? The likelihood of that happening is just a lot higher than if you're sitting there in the middle of a bunch of gringos, you know. And so that's how we found our friends, which we made a video, $200 apartment, very roomy, 3 bedroom apartment. And so I'm not saying that can't happen in Mexico, but even on the Facebook groups, the expats are now complaining and moaning and groaning about the prices here, because there's just, you know, it's just a Lisbon, Portugal. It's a gentrification process that just happens when it speeds up and things start getting expensive quickly. Then more and more people, even expats, I've read that people from the interior of USA that were trying to avoid California gentrification by coming to Mexico, they're now having to leave this area because it's too expensive for them too. Some people sit smug like, oh, who cares? So the prices are, generally speaking, the way most people do things, which we're on the nonconformist side. And I know there's people making videos about, oh, you know, live on $900 over here and live on $1,000 over there. And for the most part, these videos are made by lone wolf people operating on the internet that don't really have the massive traffic that are created by larger outfits like Retire Abroad Media and magazines. They have a much higher viewership. Even though some of these people on YouTube seem to have a lot of views, there's still no match to the Rams, Retire Abroad Media magazines. And then when other vloggers jump in, it just creates a tornado. And so these lone YouTubers, they do have some traffic, but I'm just saying it takes a lot longer for that traffic to turn into gentrification. And if they're unlucky enough, which they are, just by virtue of what they do, to happen to be promoting an area that is also promoted by Rams, then they end up having to make videos about like you're seeing now. Oh, you know, housing crisis in Portugal, and some other bloggers saying, what are you gringos doing paying more than asking price, and all that silliness that we predicted over 3 years ago was in the process of happening, and it was going to get worse, and it did. It's a constant thing that's constantly in motion, and yeah, people are saying even here that they're going to try looking for areas where there's not so many expats there, and so people, unfortunately, by that time it's a little too late. And so what is one to do about that? Well, fortunately, the world's a big place, and even though since 2020 travel has become more of a challenge for some of us, and it will become even more of a challenge unless things change in a material way for most of us, even those of us that don't think so. And so you can still live in Mexico. Now, there are going to be different areas that aren't seeing as much high cost of living expat traffic, because that makes a big difference. And so, you know, there's going to be spots where the prices aren't going to be quite as buoyant. But remember, regardless, if you find that, how you treat that scenario and how you act makes all the difference for those coming in after you. And so keep in mind all of the things we've been sharing with our followers for 10 years on this channel that we sprinkle our videos with, because I do think people will have to be doing more now. There are other unseen aspects of gentrification that affect everyone. It's not just a price thing. I've said before, it's how everyone is treated. It's known as a seller's market. It's a landlord's market. I call it, if you're renting, I call it a landlord's market. And it's treacherous, very treacherous. You just have a high discrimination rate and a high failure rate unless you become a doormat and just lay down, you know, donate, deposit, go around sprinkling everybody with deposits, and it's just contrary to how we do things. And it's just, all it does is it reinforces the idea that foreigners are just an ATM machine, and some of them are. You know, really, they kind of waited a little bit too long until they had too much money to go abroad. They really kind of did. But that's just an opinion. So the food costs are on the Latin America side, you know, and I have to be careful because I don't want to, because the locals don't think they're cheap, you know. To them, it's just a normal price that they have to pay, and it might even be high. So I want to be sensitive to that. But the living costs are still what you would expect, but we have noticed inflation rearing its ugly head, and things seem to be starting, like avocados went all the way up to, they were like around $4 now. I've seen them $6.50 now. That could be seasonal, but we've been here a year now, so yeah, that's like higher than in the States. Now, when things get higher than in the States, that's concerning. You know, even if they get close to in the States, because remember, the locals don't make those salaries, and an upper middle class salary in Mexico is $1,500 according to the Mexican locals. So generally speaking, things are more expensive in Mexico. They are getting more and more expensive every day. I mean, not all foodstuffs have had price creep, but we've seen some price creep on some of the foodstuffs. So we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months or a year, but eggs have gone up, yeah, at least I would say 15%. But there's still a lot of locally produced items that are still priced at what they've always been.
Thanks for coming to the video. Have a wonderful day.